Hello, folks. How are we doing? How is everyone? It is a very cold Thursday morning here in the UK. Let me know where you're hacking from today and how you're doing. We've got Felix Cam set up as well, having a snooze on the sofa. But yeah, how is everyone? Are you ready to learn how to make a game today? Hello, a smiley bun. That is such a good username. But how are we doing? Make sure that you all are checking in for the event. Let me grab the link and we will put it in the chat. So remember, if you register and check in for, I think it's at least 5 of these live sessions this week, you will get extra stickers, which is always good. So there, I popped it in the chat. It's a very long URL if you wanted to type it out, but you can see it on the screen there. Once you're there, make sure, in fact, I'll share my screen as well. Make sure that you are logging in and registering today. Get yourself those extra stickers. And we will be making a very fun game on the Pico 8 platform today. Hello, people are starting to show up. But yeah, let me know where you're hacking from today, what time it is for you. It's a pretty nice time for me, 9 a.m. Nice early morning stream. But yeah, get yourself registered and checked in for today. Let me know how you're doing. And we'll start running through a little bit of housekeeping for today's stream. First of all, you may want the code, so either to look at it afterwards, or I have a set of sprites we will be using for today's stream if you don't have your own. So I've got a link to my GitHub there. Give me a follow while you're at it. But I've popped that in the stream, but otherwise this actually is a URL. Felix is having a bad dream apparently, so apologies if you can hear him. Felix, wake up. Yes, but if you did not join me for yesterday's pixel art stream, you will need some sprites. So if you just want the sprites, you can quickly download this just sprites file, and I'll show you how to load it in a second. And then, yeah, if you're wanting to reference the code after this, then I've put the full version of my version of the game up as well. But what we are using today, folks, is Pico 8. And this is Pico 8. I will reboot the system so that you can see exactly what it looks like. Let me know how you're doing. Let me know sort of what programming experience you've got before. If you've got completely brand new programmers, if we've got experienced programmers but not experienced game developers. How are you all when it comes to your knowledge so that I know how we're going to pitch this today? But yeah, we are using Pico 8. So yeah, I put a link on the screen for the Pico 8 editor. So if you head to Pico 8, you will get this wonderful interface. There might be a little play button you need to press in the center, but then this will open up into Pico 8. And this is what it is. It is a fantasy retro console. If at any point during this I'm saying things that are a bit complicated, let me know in the chat, or if you feel like I'm going too slow, let me know as well. But yeah, if you want me to explain something or go back, just pop it in the comments. I'm going to make sure that I keep checking them. So when you see me looking to the side, I am checking your comments. I'm not just looking to the side, strangely. Will we be using C#? A Smiley Bun asks. No, we will not. So Pico 8 is based off of a language called Lua. I think that's how you pronounce it. It's written like this. So this is the language that, it's a relatively simple sort of language. That is what they have built Pico 8 on. So, but we'll be doing some basic stuff today. So if you've done any of the common languages, if you've done something with like Python or Java or C, something like that, you should be good to go. So yeah, head over to pico8.edu.com. Pico 8, in fact, I'll get their actual site up. Pico 8. Oh, that's the wrong one. Pico 8. So yeah, it's a fantasy console. You're probably thinking, what is that? So basically, it's meant to emulate the feel of those sort of old school retro consoles. You think your NES, your SNES, your original Game Boys, Game Boy Advance, things like that. But instead of either needing that physical hardware and them all being different across every, generation of it, and that obviously also being sort of the old style of coding, really basic, or possibly even having to use assembly. What the creator of Pico 8 has done is they've created something that will emulate that, runs on, you don't need complicated, large hardware. You certainly don't need like graphics cards and things like that. But you can run it on anything. They've made it so that you can run it on Windows, on Mac, on Linux. You can stick it on a Raspberry Pi. So you can use it anywhere. And it means that people that have this sort of love and affinity for retro games have this simple way to create and share them. And it doesn't matter, like I said, if you're using, if you're sticking it on a Raspberry Pi or if you're using it on a souped up, M2 Pro MacBook or your PC Master Race gaming PC, everyone can play the same thing. So I really like it. It emulates, the same sort of restrictions that old school consoles came with. But the limitations aren't always a problem. We were chatting about this on Pixel Art stream yesterday. Often people find that by putting limitations on something, you can actually get more creative because you have to sort of think of different solutions to get around the fact that you have those limitations. So with Pico 8 in particular, if we go back to the code editor, you can see, we've got this sort of basic command line. If you come into this, and you can use it like a regular command line. So you can do, your regular things. It works like a command line. But if once you are here, you hit escape, you end up in the editor. So escape will switch you between the command line and the editor. And once we are in the editor, there are a few different areas to it. So the first one it pops you in is the code editor. So this is where we'll be writing all of our code today. It also has a sprite editor. So it really is an all-in-one solution to making a retro game. So you can draw pixel art and things in here. And that's what we were doing on yesterday's stream. There's a tile map editor. So if you're thinking of creating, sort of like old school either Pokemon games or like Legend of Zelda dungeon crawlers, things like that, the tile mapping is really useful for that. And then this is a special effects sort of sound generator and music editor as well. But for today, we will just be using the first two, the code editor and the sprite section. Now, does that all make sense? So you've got an idea. We've sort of got this limited retro vibe code editor that we're going to be making our retro style games on. So let me know if there's anything you want me to go over again. And if you haven't already, head over to the link that is on the screen now to open up so that you can join in with our coding. But yeah, Pico 8 is very, very cool. I like it a lot. I'll just shut that. The other good thing to note about this is if you want to download it like locally, so if you want to have why is my mouse not moving? There it is. So either to put it on a Raspberry Pi or on a computer, you have to pay for a license to do that though. The education version is browser-based and is free, so that is what we will be using today. But if you do want to use this and really get interested in it, then by all means go over and purchase a license. But for today, we will just be making use of the nice free browser version. And you can still do pretty much everything with it anyway. So it's all good. And a quick note on the limitations of this. You're probably thinking, why is there this random number at the bottom? So the way that Pico 8 limits the amount of code you can write in a single cartridge, so a cartridge is what they call your sort of file, is by how many tokens you have in your code. So if I were to create, a variable x and equals it to, I don't know, the width of something plus 16. This would take up 5 tokens, as you can see. So each sort of section has its own token. So the X variable has a token, the equal sign, the variable for the width, the plus, and then the 16. So you're limited in size to just 8,192. Now, you can still do a lot with that many tokens, but it does mean that you tend to get creative in thinking of sort of reduced code versions. I was going to say simpler ways to do things, but it might not always be simpler. But it means that you're sort of thinking about how you can reduce and make the most efficient code, if you will, for the tokens that you have to use. So with that, if everyone is sorted, I think we can get on to making a game. Hello, good morning. 404 is here with the Harry Potter logo. I'm just going to get rid of that banner off the screen. I think the last also interesting thing to note with Pico 8 is the font is all in capitals. You do not need to use the capitals. Again, to make use of the fact that it's a really sort of small package, if you use so this is me putting caps lock on, you get all these funky symbols. And so that is so that they have a smaller sort of restriction for the font. That's what I'm trying to say, the typeface. So where you see this is all in capitals, that's just typing regularly. And you can't, therefore, type in capitals, if that makes sense, because you can't type in lowercase, basically. So that is another thing to note. So where you see me typing in capitals, I'm not. That is lowercase, and that's just the way Pico 8 wants to work. So if everyone's ready, we're going to get going with making a game, and I'm going to show you the game that we are going to make. So I already have it loaded. Oops. See, there we go. Me sticking a capital in where it shouldn't be. And so this is the code that is on the GitHub link I showed earlier, which I will pop in the chat again. Ba-ba-ba. So this is this jelly jump game. So if I run it, we are basically making a Flappy Bird clone style game. So for this, you're just using the up arrow every time you want to jump. We've got a score going along. We've got the cave system, just procedurally generating as the game goes. And we've got an X to restart. And you can also, I always seem to lose by crashing into the floor, but you can also crash into the ceiling. So that is the game that we will be making today. And again, we can just, if you hit escape, you can now see that I'm in the command line. Again, because it's a limited thing, it doesn't overwrite the screen, but we can just do a nice little clear screen. But for now, I'm going to reboot just to get a fresh instance. So yeah, if you head over to the GitHub, now if you were in the stream yesterday and made some sprites, you can use them. But if you either don't want to use them or you were in my stream yesterday, if you download the just sprites file, you can then just click and drag it over. So if you're in the command line, you can just click and drag the file over into your browser. At that point, it will load it. You'll just need to say load. Now, I have a feeling, yes, mine's got a different name on here. So mine's just called sprites, but yours is called just sprites. So once you click and drag it over, do load sprites.p8 or just sprites.p8. And if we go back into the code editor, hitting escape, it has not got, I did not save it without. Hold on, let me just delete all this code because we're going to do it together. But yeah, this is a look onto the code editor. A sneaky peek for the code we'll be writing today. But don't worry, we'll be going through it step by step. So if you loaded the just sprites, in fact, we'll get rid of them as well. It should have these 3 wonderful sprites in it. I totally agree with this. I love Harry Potter references. I'll make a Harry Potter game next time. But yeah, basically we have our 3 sprites here. We've got the jumping sprite, we've got the falling sprite, and we've got the game over sprite. So if you've all got Pico 8 loaded with the sprites loaded in and an empty code editor, you are ready to go. Let me know in the chat if we've got people ready and raring to go with some Pico 8 today. And like I said, if there's at any point I'm saying something that doesn't make sense or I'm going too quick, just let me know in the chat and we will go back over things. But if people are ready, we can get on to making ourselves a game. So, the very first thing that we need when we are creating our game is a game loop. If you've attended any of the other game making streams so far this Global Hack Week, they probably have done something very similar. But most sort of softwares and different engines use a game loop to run their games, and Pico 8 is no different. So Pico 8 runs with 3 main functions for their game loop. And you don't get a choice in what to call these. These have to be written exactly how they are because this is how Pico 8 works. So we need to create a underscore init version. Who remembers MLH Global Hack Week init for our season launch? Got a nice little shout out there to it. So we've got function underscore init, and then we just need a set of curly brackets. We've got update also with a set of curly brackets. And we need, of course, a little end as well. And then we have function draw, because our games have some lovely graphics as well. So as long as we have those 3 functions, this is what we need for our game. You don't need to do these comments, but just for your own reference, this is your init happens 1 time at the start. So anything you need just to get the game sort of going goes in your init. Update is a special one. It happens, so it loops 30 times a second, because that is the rate that Pico 8 is built on. And then draw also loops 30 times a second, but it loops, or it runs rather, after, if I could type today, it runs after our update loop has run. So anything that you stick in update will happen before draw, so you need to make sure that you haven't put something in update that needs to run in draw, and vice versa. So, have I run it? I have not yet. I've been too busy, unfortunately, but I promise I will get to it soon. So yeah, it's everyone following this so far. So we've got our 3 loops that Pico 8 is going to use to run our game. We've got init, which will just happen 1 time at the start, the very first thing to run. That happens 1 time, then won't run again. We've then got update, which runs 30 times a second. And then we've got draw as well. Draw runs after update. So everyone's got that. That is our game loop. And now what we could do now is, when we start to write all of our code, put them in these functions. That would work, but we tend to sort of not do that. That's not sort of the best practice when it comes to managing your code and managing a game. So what we tend to do is create other functions elsewhere and then call them, so that when you're debugging, you can just look and make sure which functions are called, and it just helps keep everything tidy, keeps everything sort of segmented and compartmentalized. So yes, we will be moving on. So the first thing we are going to get started with is our player character, our player sprite. So we need to create the functions that we are wanting to call within this. So the very first thing we'll need to do is have a function that is going to create our player. So we need to call the sprite, and we need to add all the variables that we need to make a player. Now, we only need to create the player once, because we're never going to destroy them until the end of the game. So we just need to keep it once and keep it running, okay? So we're going to put this make player function in our init section, okay? because we only want to call it once, so we don't need to keep recreating a brand new player and restarting the game. That wouldn't be very fun if the whole game was just you starting one time every 30 seconds. 30 times every 1 second even. So we're going to make a make player function, and we are going to pop it in the init. What we will also need to do is we're going to have to draw our player. So every time something appears on the screen, that's something that we are drawing. Because you've got to think about like the computer's drawing out the images. That is going to have to happen every single time. We don't want to just draw it once and leave it there. We want to draw every single time we're going through a frame of the game. And that we are updating this with, the movement of the player. And another thing that can happen, because this is retro style, is this won't automatically sort of erase the rest of the screen. If we're not drawing over every single aspect, then it's going to sort of leave something behind. Like before when I showed you when I went back to the command line and the background of the game was still there. So something we would also need to do at the start of every draw cycle is clear the screen. So CLS for clear screen. And because these are all functions, we need to add brackets to all of them. Again, if you've used something like Python, you'll be used to adding this. And one other variable that we will stick in now just for ease, and that we will be using later, is we need a game over variable. So this will just help us later on know that, well, whether or not the game is over yet or not. And we're going to set that to false. You see this is highlighted blue. This is because it is a Boolean value, so it can be true or false. And we've got a nice bit of syntax editing there. So hopefully you're all following along. Let me know in the chat how this is going for you, if it's going too quick or too slow, and if you need me to go over anything. But this is our initial sort of setup for the loops, and we now need to create these functions that we are going to call. So again, for sort of ease of showing this on stream, but also just for sort of going through your own code, we are going to make use of the pages. You probably won't have another page open yet, so you'll need to press that plus sign so that we've got a new page. Now, again, thankfully, the Pico 8 sorts out any sort of like importing and calling of pages, so we can just write code here, and we can, any functions we create on page 1, like page 1, we can easily call with no problem on page 0 and any other pages we create. But this is going to become our player page or tab. So this is where the functions about our player are all going to live. Now, the first one we've got is this make player. So that is the first function we're going to create. Again, we need that function keyword, and then we're going to make, we need an underscore, make player. So again, function keyword, we need to put brackets at the end, and then it's easiest if you always remember the first thing you do, stick end at the bottom of the function. Now, I'm going to go into more detail about all of the variables we're using for the player sort of avatar as and when we get to them. But for now, you can just sort of walk through them with me. And then as we sort of edit them and change them and make use of them in other functions, I'll explain what each one does. But the first thing we need to do is create our player table. Now, in Pico 8, it's very simplified with its data types. So you might be used to Python, where you've got lists and arrays, and other programming languages where you've got dictionaries, variables, lists, arrays, all that jazz. In Pico 8, we have variables and we have tables. But the Pico 8 tables are very, very useful because we can have tables of tables. So they're very, very versatile. And if you've used dictionaries before, it's very similar to that. So a Pico 8 table has a key and a value. If you don't give them a key, then they'll just be numbered sort of 1 to however many, or you can set a nice key as well. So that is what we are going to be using. And the easiest way to do this in Pico 8 is just to use a dot. So we are going to set a key in the player table called X, and we're going to set it to a 24. And we can also give the player a Y value, and we will get started at 60. Now, Probably thinking, where is she getting these positions from? So the Pico 8 screen is 128 by 128. And it starts with 0, 0 in the top left corner. So this is just sort of moving us in and down. It just makes it's a good position for the game, put it that way. But this is something that you can experiment with when we're playing, testing it later. You know, if you wanted to start further over the screen or on the other side of the screen. But I found through sort of my experimentation that these values set you in a pretty nice place for playing. So I'll put a comment in so we remember this is our player. When will I learn to stop using the caps lock button, folks? Player position. We've got our player position. And then we are going to do our player fall speed. So when we start, we don't want to be falling at all. So we'll just leave that at 0, but we will work on that one a bit later on because it's a bit more complicated. So we've got our player fall speed and we're going to set it to 0. In fact, you know what? That's quite a long variable name, isn't it? We'll just call it, oh no, we can't call it floor because there's something I'm going to do here. We'll leave it as fall speed, player fall speed. And we're currently setting it to 0 because when we open the game, we want to give them a second to start playing. So we'll just leave that fall speed as 0 for now. Right, our next one. How are we doing? Is this all right, folks? Let me know in the chat if you're following along, if it's going okay. If anything you want me to go over, just let me know in the chat. Okay, but assuming that the silence is that everyone's following along fine, we're going to keep moving. We are then going to set up our sprites. So we want a nice colourful look at this game. So we're going to have our sprites now. Thankfully, because again, Pico 8 is sort of this all-in-one solution, it already knows what the sprites are. So these locations are already sort of labelled for us within Pico 8. Now, this is the one that comes up immediately. We ignore that one. We just leave it be. We then have sprite 1, sprite 2, and sprite 3, as you can see here. So we are going to set when the player is falling down, it's going to be sprite 1. When we'll not start with that one. That's not the one that's first, is it? We've got the player rising as number 1. Player rise is sprite 1. We've got player fall as sprite 2. And we've got player dead if they've lost the game in sprite position 3. Now you're probably thinking, how does Pico 8 know that these numbers equal the sprites? This is something that we will discover later on when we start writing our draw player function. But for now, we just have sprites 1, 2, and 3. We then also have our player speed. And this is different to the fall speed. So the fall speed is how quickly we're going up and down. The player speed is how sort of fast it would be traveling along. Now, if you've played Flappy Bird before, you know you don't actually move across the screen. You just go up and down. But the speed, it's kind of going to be the distance we travel per loop iteration. And again, this is something that you can explore and play with when you're playtesting it. For now, we're just going to go with a value of 2. But again, you can change that, find what you think works best for you. Obviously, the quicker the game goes, the more difficult it's going to be. The slower, the more time you have to react and change to things. So we will keep that going. And then the final thing we need is a score value. And obviously, when you start the game, you haven't done anything yet. So we're just going to have a score of 0. So that is us setting up our player table. So like I said, we've got the curly brackets at the top for the table, and then we are setting values. So we've got the key after that full stop, or the period if you're American, or elsewhere that uses period instead of full stop. So yeah, we've got a key of 8 with a value of 24, key of Y with a value of 60, fall speed, our sprites, and our actual speed and our score. So that is our make player function. And again, we're just calling that once at the start of the game in the init game loop section. Obviously, if we were calling that every single time, we would never get a score because we'd always be setting it back to 0. So the next one we need to create the next function, it's kind of like Lua. It exactly is Lua. Oh, yep, going good, fabulous. Yeah, this is, so Pico 8 is built off of Lua. So yeah, you are absolutely right, recognizing that. So yes, we need to create our draw player function that we've called over here, draw player. We need to write that one next. So again, we've got our function keyword and then our function name, draw player, with our brackets. We'll stick our end in straight away so we don't forget it. And this one's pretty simple. If the game is still going, we need to draw the player in the correct position and with the correct sprite. And if the game is over, rather, we need to draw the dead sprite. So, easy way to do this, we've got an if statement. So if this particular condition within our bracket is met, then we will do something. Else, if another condition is met, and again, we've got our brackets, then we can do something else. And then if both of those conditions aren't met, we will do one more final thing, and then that will end our if statement. So hopefully you will used or looked at if statements before, but this is the if statement we are going to be working on today. We need an if, an else if, and an else. And so this is basically going to be telling us which of those 3 sprites are we going to draw. That's why we've got 3 sections to it. Our first one is going to be if game over. So because we set game over originally in our init with a Boolean value, we can just say if game over, because that's going to check if it's true or false. Now, obviously, if the game is over, we don't want to draw either of the other sprites. We want to draw our player dead sprite. Now, this SPR function is special. This is telling us that we're going to draw a sprite, and this is going to let us know that whatever value here, whatever number value we have in this first part of the function, is going to correspond to these sprites. So that's why we could get away with just using the number values earlier on. So we're going to draw a sprite. The sprite we want is the dead sprite, and we just want them to stop wherever they are. So we've got our player X value for the X value and our player Y value for the Y value. Pretty simple. In fact, can I zoom out on this a bit? Does it want to let me? Nope. That's fine though. So yeah, we've got our sprite. The first argument is the sprite number we want, and then the X positions of the sprite and the Y position, which is just our player positions. The next thing we want to know is whether or not we are rising or falling. Okay, so that is our fall speed. So the way this is going to work is that if we have a positive fall speed, so say we're falling at a fall speed of 3, that means we're falling down. If we have a negative fall speed, so say we're falling at -5, then we'll be going sort of up, if that makes sense. Will be the opposite of falling. So if our player fall speed is less than 0, so something -3, so we want the opposite of falling, rising, we are going to draw our player rise sprite. And again, our X and Y coordinates are just going to be where the player is, our player X and our player Y. And then our final section, hold on, let me just shimmy over on the screen. So yeah, let me know if this is going too quick or too slow, folks. This time, so we're saying the game isn't over, so we're still playing the game. And we know that our player is, now we're going to say it's going to have a positive value, so it's going to be either 0 or above. Then we are now falling, so we need to use our player fall sprite. So we'll go sprite player.fall, and then player X for the X position and player Y for the Y position. So this is our first little loop. Now, if we hit escape, we'll get back to our command line and we hit run. What has gone wrong? We have an error, folks. Let's do some live debugging. Ba-ba-da-ba. This is just not liking my white space that I've added, trying to make it clearer for you all. Where's the problem coming from, folks? Let's have a look. Draw player. It's because I've spelled function wrong. There we go. See, we should have realized that because it wasn't highlighted. So, assuming you've spelled all of your words correctly, folks, hit escape. We'll clear the screen. If you just type run and press enter, you can now see we have a sprite. It doesn't do much yet because all we've done is tell it to draw. We've got no way of controlling it, no way of moving it yet, but you should hopefully see your sprite on your screen. Okay, to get out of it, we just hit escape again. Again, like I was saying, this hasn't cleared the screen, which is why we had that clear screen command before, but you can do that with a little clear screen. And then, yeah, we can hit escape and get back to our lovely code editor. So there should be a sprite appearing. If that isn't, debug, check your spellings first of all, first and foremost, check your spelling. But if people are all good, let me know in the chat and we can move on to actually making this player move and actually starting to make it a proper game. I'll do a cheeky little time check. It is 22:10. So yeah, assuming that we are all good with this, we will move on to adding some movement. Again, I'm going to take your deafening silence as we're all good to move on. Waiting for Amy's GTC tour next. Yes, so we're going to move on to making our player move now. This is a really good Pico 8 cheat sheet that Pico 8 provided, but the thing we want to look at specifically is the way that Pico 8 does controls. So these are the Pico 8 symbols for the arrow keys, and they are what we are going to be focusing on first of all today, and then we've also got an X key as well. So the way Pico 8 labels everything is that 0 is your left key, 2 is your up key, 1 is your right key, and 3 is your down arrow key. So when we are wanting to look at a button press, we check if these numbers have been pressed, okay? So we'll just close that for the internet. So what we now want to do is we want to be able to move the player. So first of all, we're going to do that in our update section again. We aren't going to be looking at drawing the player, so this needs to be in our update rather than our draw. So we want to very simply create a move player function in our page 1 in our update section, and then back in our player page we now need to go down to the bottom, making sure we're spelling function correctly this time. Create a move player object. We've got a question. Does it support gamepad input? It absolutely does. So you can use it with all sorts of other consoles. And again, if you're using the full version, let me get the site up. The non-browser based version. If you get the license and download it, then yeah. So you can stick it on any of the sort of modern retro consoles that you can buy. You can stick it on with the gamepad. So yeah. We've got MIDI 2. Is this something that was on the cheat sheet? Let me have a little look. But there's a whole sort of music section to it, sort of doing like bit tune and things like that. It's not something that we're going to work on today, but yeah, there's loads to Pico 8, much beyond sort of what we're doing today that you can explore. So yeah, we're going to be working on moving our player. So we've got our function keyword, move player, and of course straight away add our end keyword in so that we don't forget it. Now, what we need to do is we need to decide on a gravity value. So a lot of games that have any sort of platforming, it's called sort of the game physics. And if you remember your physics lessons, you probably discussed gravity. And our gravity is going to affect our fall speed just like it does in real life. So the stronger gravity is, the quicker your fall speed will change. And again, to keep things nice and simple, we want to keep things in separate variables. Now, again, this is something that you can experiment with. We're going to go with a nice sort of small value for the moment of 0.2, but this is something that a bigger gravity would give you a faster fall, if that makes sense. Technically, it's going to give you a greater rate of acceleration of your fall, but we're going to add more gravity. So that means that our player fall speed needs to increase each sort of run through of the loop by our gravity value. So again, just in an effort to use less tokens, have I spelled gravity correctly? No, I haven't. In an effort to use less tokens, we can do this plus equals. So all this means is that we are saying that the value in fall speed is going to be the value it currently holds plus gravity. So that would be the same as writing equals player fall speed plus gravity. But this way, we're using less tokens and we're not eating up into our count, okay? So obviously, the longer something falls until it reaches terminal velocity in real life, it keeps increasing in speed. So we're going to be adding more of our sort of gravity value on as we're falling until you jump, because that is how falling works. And we're going to go with some semi-realistic values for this. We then also need to see if we are going to jump or not. So we can do that really simply in Pico 8 with Lua, with the if statement. And we are going to say BTNP. So this checks whether or not a button has been pressed. Okay, now what we could have done is asked what state the button has, which is just BTN. But again, we want to be using fewer tokens where we can. So we've got this, is this button pressed? And it's going to return simply true or false. Okay, so if button pressed, and obviously we want to use the up arrow because we're sort of jumping up, that makes sense. So again, we're looking, and the up arrow key is 2. So we are going to see if button 2 has been pressed, and if it has, got our then keyword, then what we want to do is we want to shoot the player up. So we want to give them a negative fall speed. And again, this is a value that you can change and experiment with. We are going to subtract 5 from it. Okay. So if you're falling really quick, you might need to do several jumps in a row to be able to adjust the fall speed accurately. But so yeah, if you're hitting very often, you're going to be sort of flying up too quickly. So we're changing the fall speed. And again, you know, this is going to, because of the limitations of the screen and how far you can fall, for the values we're choosing, so the gravity of 0.2 and our fall speeds by doing a -5. Again, this is all of your experimentation when you're play testing, but I found that 5 gives you a pretty good jump, quite intuitive, gives you time to sort of react. Obviously, we don't want to forget our end on our if function. So this is basically if we are jumping. And then what we need to do is actually let Pico 8 know that we have moved to a new position. So we've changed all of these values, but we actually need to tell the sprite to move up. So we will change our Y position by our fall speed. So this means if we haven't pressed anything, if we just continue falling, we will just add the gravity value again, increasing that to our fall speed. But if we press the button, we're going to change that and jump up. And obviously having this minus value will send us up the screen. So does that all make sense now? I didn't do it at the start, but we need to also end our function. Again, let me know in the chat if this is all making sense or if I might as well be talking gibberish. But this will be our little move sort of player value function. Okay, again, we can test this. So hitting escape to get back to the command line, typing in run and hitting enter. And we have a problem. Have I spelt function wrong again? I wouldn't be surprised. Player.y plus equals player.fall speed. Why has it got a problem with that? Expected near end. Where have I forgotten to write end? Is it just because I've left some white space? Nope. End of function expected near end. This is the joys of coding live, folks. $10 magical points if you can spot the error before I do. If statement's fine. Have I something that I added earlier on as well, maybe? It doesn't make sense to do that. Gravity. Player.fall speed. Pursuit gravity. Jumping full speed. That gives 5. Move to new position. Player Y plus equals player full speed. Is player Y an integer? Player Y is in fact an integer. Well, it's a float. It's a number. That shouldn't be the problem, I think, because then again, the variable types in Lua or in Pico 8 are very simple. What is going on, folks? The one thing that I don't love about Pico 8 is I find the font quite difficult to read through for debugging. Let's get rid of the comments because that comment's just frustrating my brain. Try a constant on that line of test. Good thought. Attempting to call a string value. No, you're not. You shouldn't be attempting to call a string value. Everything should be. I wonder if I put gaps in. Again, that should not affect it, but what is going on here, folks? Right, we'll try getting rid of all the spaces in case. But look, it's highlighted blue, so it knows that we're working with numbers rather than anything else. Player Y initialize with a number up here as well. Again, these white spaces should not make a difference. The end at the end. What about the end at the end? There's an extra end. Where is there? Oh, there we go. Well done. 10 points to Ravenclaw. Right. If we now run, there's a problem that we fell really quickly because I set that to 60. So let's set this back to what it needed to be. If we got plus equals player full speed. Okay. Escape to get back to the command line. Run. You should now, if you're playing along at home, folks, have a jumping jellyfish or a jumping whatever you made. Now, the one problem with this is we can go way up off the screen, and we can also, when it eventually falls back down, go off the screen. And we don't want to do that. See, we're going way too fast and we're going all over the place. So, even escape to get back to our thing. So, we need to, make some obstacles to go into, and we need to get them moving along. I know, the joys of debugging on stream. We've got an end at the end at the end at the end. So, fabulous. Hopefully yours all works and you're all tested and yours works. But yeah, congratulations. You know what? Debugging is part of life when you're writing games and programming. So I'm glad we could do it together, folks. So yes, we're going to move now on to creating sort of I've imagined this as like a cave system, like an underwater cave, kind of like an old school sort of water Mario level, something like that. So obviously, if you've made something sort of sky themed, you might want to make it clouds or something else. But what I want to do is make it a cave. So in our init, we are going to make a cave. And then in our update, we want to update our cave. Now, as this is the background, I want to do it before all of the player stuff. I want it to sort of already exist before the player, because if we're doing things and we're wanting to sort of react to where the player is and the player's moving before we sort of move the background on, that's not going to make sense. So we've got our make, our update, and we have our draw cave functions. So show you again, we've added make cave, which I've spelled incorrectly. Let's change that now. Make cave, update cave, and draw cave. Now, again, keeping this nice and sort of tidy for showing on stream, I'm going to go into another page, and this is going to become our cave page. But you could just do this all in that first file. You could have just done it with your functions in this file. But yeah, I'm separating mine out just for sort of the ease of showing you everything. And again, the aim with this is we're going to have sort of that top row, that sort of ceiling, and we're going to have sort of that bottom row on the floor, and we're going to be sort of trying to stay in between them. Also, yes, thank you for saying the error was a bit misleading. I agree. So the first thing we need to do is make our cave. And again, very similar to our make player function before, we're going to be making use of the table functionality. So function make cave. Very cautiously add an end to it. So we are going to have a cave, and we use our curly brackets to open. Now, again, we are wanting to reduce the amount of tokens we are using, and a really useful part of this, like I mentioned, is that you can have a table of tables. So if you think about it, the cave is just going to be a load of lines that we draw for the ceiling and a load of lines that we draw for the floor. So what we can do is we can have a table within our cave table that holds all of the top values, and we can have a table that holds all of the bottom values. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. So within our table, we're going to create another table that holds our top values. This time we are going to use a string. And I've forgotten, we need to add a value. So the first set of curly brackets is for our cave table. Then we're now going to go in and make our sort of ceiling table. So we've got another curly bracket. And then I wanted to set a particular value. And that value is going to go in the square brackets. We're just going to call it top because it's a nice short word and it fits easily when we're writing this editor in, rather than something like ceiling right now. So we've got our top value. That's being held in our square brackets. Now, this is something that we will experiment with later. For now, I'm going to say a 5. we can again experiment with this once we're playing. And then we want another value, because we're wanting to sort of make each section of the cave its own sort of table. So we've got a top and a bottom that correspond. So now we want I don't know if anyone else experiences this. My keyboard is like a Windows and a Mac one, and the amount of times I forget which speech marks I'm going to need is ridiculous. So we've got a bottom value, and we are going to set that to equal, let's go 120 for now. Again, remember we've got a 128 by 128 pixel system with 0, 0 in the top left. So you're just thinking you're going sort of 5 down for that first one, and from 128 up to like 120. So that's sort of the way we're getting our values. Again, we'll sort of mess with these later. And then we need to close our 2 curly brackets. Hopefully this will be working and following. If you need me to go over it again, I can do. But that is what the values are Cave is going to hold. Is it because I'm using a non-US layout? Yeah, I've got a UK layout, and then it's also got Windows, like a Windows layout and a Mac layout. So a lot of the keys are like double keys, it's the whole thing. So yes, hopefully you've typed that out. This is kind of a trust me on this. If you're sort of making games yourself, not on a live stream and not with a time restriction, then this is something you could have separated into several lines and several sort of allocations. But again, the good sort of mind frame to get into with Pico 8 is that you're trying to reduce the amount of tokens you're using because of the limited token allowance for the cartridges. So anything you can do where you're not having to now use extra, using extra equal signs as assignments, the better. And then what we want to do is we want to limit the how far down a cave can go, and how far down the ceiling can go, how high up the floor can go. Obviously, if we have it so that they've met, then it's impossible. So this is going to limit the ceiling. Another thing to note is that, hold on, actually, I'll finish writing this in, and then we'll limit the bottom to say 85. Again, we can sort of mess with these once we're playing. But yeah, adding comments doesn't eat up your tokens as well, so go wild with adding your comments. So yeah, this is going to make our cave. So we've got the table we need to hold the values, and then we've got these 2 limits set that we have. Again, we'll play test that later on. The next thing that we are going to do is our update cave. So this is going to be updating the table store that has the values that we will use later on to draw the lines in. So we're going to have function update. Okay, but once we finish this, we'll probably have a quick little break as well. So if you're getting tired or you're going to need a drink soon, do not worry, we'll have that coming up soon. Now, if you think about it, once we've created our cave, we're basically going to be adding columns on. And once we've filled the screen, so we've got like 128 across, we need to start getting rid of that first column, move it out of the way, move everything along, and add the new one. So the first thing we need to do is remove that sort of back column, which I've just realized I'm flipped on the screen, so that's probably really confusing gestures. We're going to remove the back column of the cave so that we can move everything along and add the new sort of end. So removing backmost cave column. Okay, folks. So what we're going to do with this now, this is a little bit complicated. Again, with this being sort of an intro stream, we haven't particularly got the time to go into it. Either message me after, we can go into it, or you can sort of look up the code afterwards. But a really cool sort of function that Pico 8 has, or that Lua has, is you can do a hashtag. Believe it or not, that is a hashtag. I know it looks like a ladder, but that is a hashtag. That is what Pico 8 uses as a typeface for a hashtag. So we've got hash cave that simply returns the number of values in the cave, okay? And we need to know if that is greater than our player speed, which we have spelled incorrectly twice. Now, if we go back to our player speed is kind of equal to the sort of the distance we're traveling each frame. So basically, if we've moved past it, we need to sort of get rid of them. So it'll make more sense once we've done the rest of the functions. Just bear with me for now. Just trust me. So yeah, if we've moved past creating that part of the cave, then we're going to get rid of that particular column. So for I equals 1 to the player speed, so what we've gone past, we are going to simply delete a value, and we have a lovely function to use for, so it's delete. The first parameter is the table, and then the value in the table that you want. So we're going to delete a entry from our cave, and we want to delete the first one. Now, if you have used a language like Python before, you'll know that everything's sort of 0 based. So normally your first entry would be sort of cave 0. Lua doesn't do that. Lua is 1 based. So we are using cave 1. So make sure we're putting the correct number of ends. So that's the end for the for loop. This is the end for the if statement. There we go. Make sure this doesn't catch us out again. So basically, with that section, we've removed the correct hand, the far left column. We now need to add a new one. So add more cave. And now, obviously, once we've sort of got into the game, each time we know we just need to add that one. But in order to sort of fill the screen, we need an ability to create that first set of 128. So the quickest way to do that is while the number of entries into cave is less than 128. 128 because it's 128 wide sort of pixels screen, 128 by 128. Whilst we are less than that, so while we haven't created a full cave, what we will do, anyone drop the link for the check-in event? I most certainly can. So yes, whilst we haven't got a full cave, so whether that's at the start or later on, what we need to do is we need to set up a new column to add. Now we're going to use this local keyword. All that means is that this column is just using in this function. So we don't want it global and being used everywhere, because each time we want a fresh column. We're just going to use this to create the column so that we can add it to the cave table. So local column. And remember, we're doing a table of tables. So we've created a table. And again, this isn't something we particularly have the time to get into now, but you can either message me about this or look over the code sort of in your own time afterwards. But we basically need to decide how far up or down we're sort of moving the next cage. So if I got any paper near me, right, we'll just, in fact, can I actually do it like this? No, I can't. JS paint app. Okay. So basically, we don't want to just, we need a much thicker pen than that. Edit. Can we not edit the? Oh, there we go. So the way we are creating our cave is we're basically going to draw lines like this that make our cave. So you saw that when I played at the start. Now, the one thing is, if we want this to look sort of semi-realistic, that's going to be annoying. What we don't want to happen is that we have a really long one, and then we have like some really random short ones, and then we have a really long one, and then some short ones. It's not going to look natural. It's going to be sort of a bit jagged and just not very comfortable when we play it. So instead of being able to sort of jump through all of these values, we want to write our code in a way that we aren't going to go sort of too far away from the values. We probably even wouldn't want to go that far. We want to sort of keep some even values so that we're not, like I said, sort of jumping up here and over there. So we will limit that by creating just a random number. And again, this is something that just these values came about with sort of trial and error. We want the ability to move by, say, about 4. So the way that this is working, I'm basically, because you kind of want like a sprite amount. So yeah, this hashtag symbol absolutely looks like a ladder. Why is there a ladder next to cave? Sorry, I just spotted that comment. Yeah, that's the hashtag symbol. You can get like a reference sheet of the full font. So basically, we want to know if we're going to go up or down. So we randomly generate a number from 7, but then we have a -3. So the up is for the ceiling and the bottom is for the floor. So this will take us somewhere from sort of -3 to 4. So we'll get that variation. But yeah, this is another case where you just sort of need to trust me that through experimentation, this is what works well. But again, this is something that if you were making your own game, you would have to experiment with and see, you know, how sort of drastic a change it is if you made that. You know, random 10 minus 5, something like that, you would obviously get a much larger range. Okay, so we sort of got these random numbers that we're going to use to sort of adjust. Now what we need to do is create the next section by comparing it to the previous one. So our top value, so this is our ceiling, we are going to take the middle value of 3, the previous, the end cave value. I'll explain this once we typed it out. Dot top plus up and top. So we'll go through this step by step. In fact, no, I'll leave it the way it is. So mid is basically what we're going to use to cap, to make sure that we're not going above the limits that we set at the top. So So when we made our cave, we set these limits, okay? So we want to make sure that we aren't going beyond these limits. Now, we could have generated the value and then used an if statement. If it's above the limit, then we need to cut it off at the limit. If it's below the limit, we need to cut it off. If it's not, use it however it is. The problem is creating an if statement like that would have used up a lot of tokens. So instead, we're going to make use of this lovely mid function. And what it does is it gets the middle value for us of a set. And the cheeky way we are going to use this is, basically, we don't want to go sort of below 3. Obviously, if we had it at like 0, there would be no cave visible. So we want to be able to see it. A single pixel wouldn't be very big. So 3 is going to be sort of our lower limit. So we want it to come down at least 3 from the ceiling. And we know that we don't want it to go past 45. So this is our global top variable that we used earlier. This then is going to be, well, we'll highlight the first section. Oops, where'd it go? This, the cave value top, This is just the previous. Why won't this scroll along? This is the the final column. This is just grabbing that top value, okay? And then we are going to add this change of up. So that's going to tell us that we're going to, whatever random number we've got, somewhere from -3 to 4, this is going to add that. Now, if that previous line was 44, and then I've come in and I want to add 4 to it, that's obviously going to put us at 49, which is above our value. So at that point, our top limit would be the top value. Likewise, if we were already at 3 and then we did a -3, and we're now at 0, we don't want that. So it would cap out at the 3. Otherwise, if it's a value that's within our limit, so currently between 3 and 45, then we just keep it as it is. So hopefully that makes sense. I can go over it again if you want. We've got a great comment there. Yeah. Hashtag caves return the length of the cave. Putting it in, using it to call the value for cave, returns the last value in cave. Could not have said it better myself. I probably didn't. So yeah, great comment there from a smiley bird. So yes, hopefully that all makes sense. If not, we could look over it after, but I'm just conscious that we are already quite far in our time. The next one is going to be basically a copy of that, but doing it for the bottom of the cave. So we've got column dot bottom is going to be the middle value. This time, bottom goes at the start, because again, you got to think our smaller value is now higher up. Cave square bracket, hashtag cave. Yeah, square bracket dot bottom plus down. We'll put the spaces in because it looks a bit neater. And again, we don't want to go all the way to 128 because again, that would be drawing off the screen. So we'll go to 124. And the last thing we need to then do is just simply add this new column that we made to the cave table. And there's a lovely add function for tables in Pico 8. And then we need to end the while loop. The other end is correct. Hopefully we won't have any run errors with our ends this time. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense. But like I said, we're running low on time, so I'm going to sort of power through. And I can answer questions again at the end if people, or you can message me on Discord, something like that. The last one we need to do that we have in this call is we need to draw the cave. And I've spelled function wrong again. Function draw _ cave. And if people are happy, I'm happy to push through without a break today. If that's okay with you. I think you mean ladder cave. I refuse to call it anything else. But you don't have a ladder key on your keyboard. So if I'm dictating what you're all typing, then people are going to get even more confused if I now start saying ladder cave. Yeah, the last thing we need to do is set some colors. Now, this again is something that you can do depending on sort of the vibe you're wanting to go with. Also, obviously, I'm going to be typing this with the British spelling. If you want to type it with the American spelling, go for it. But again, we've got our cheat sheet. So these are the values, sort of numbers that Pico 8 goes with. I think I'm going to go for this sort of dark grey 5 as the colour for my caves. So, and again, you can sort of experiment with having a top and a bottom colour. So you might want, in fact, I might do sort of a dark grey at the top, but the black at the bottom, or the dark blue. You know, this is all just something that you can experiment with, but just for the sake of ease, I'm just going to stick them with the same value. And the last thing we need to do is for every single instance of our cave, we need to actually draw those lines in. So from 1, again, to ladder cave for polar void, hashtag cave, we simply want to draw some lines. And again, we've got this lovely line function. So we'll do I-1, 0. And again, these are just sort of working off of the coordinates we've got. I-1, we need to draw So the first one we'll do the top line. So this is basically setting up the position. In fact, we can look it up on the reference because this has got a lot of arguments. Command F line. Who'd have thought there'd be so many lines? There we go. So where'd it go? There it is. So for line, our parameters are our X and Y position for starting, the lines, the end positions, and then a colour for it as well. So that call is standing for colour. So we want the start positions, the end positions, and the colour. So our start position, we're reading from it. Our end position, we are reading. And then, is that correct? Yeah, start and end positions. 0 because we wanted the top. So all of our lines are going to start at the top and all our lines are going to start at the bottom, if that makes sense. So yes. Cave I. So the length of it is going to be just the height down. So cave I square brackets. The mouse hovering was making me confused there, folks. Sorry about that. Yeah, so the drop down is just going to be the value for this. And then, yeah, we want our top colour. So let's just double check that because it's quite a long function call. So to draw our ceiling lines in, we take the value of it. So that we get the X value out of the table. We know all of them are going to start at 0 because they start from the very top of the screen. And then we have the length that we're calling out. And then we've got the colour that we're going to call it. Awesome. So that works fine. Line. And then we do the same for the bottom. So line I-1. This time, though, we need to draw it from the bottom going up. So instead of that 0, we're going to use 127. If it was 128, it would go off the screen because each line is going to be, at least 1 pixel. So we'll do 127 because it's a 128 by a 128 screen. And then we need I-1. That's why I was getting confused because there's no space. And then, again, we need to grab our cave value. That's what was confusing me, folks. I forgot to write top in. Bottom. And then the bottom colour. So, my camera's gone off. Why has that happened? I don't know why that happened, but we're back. So no worries. So, yeah. We've drawn our line for the ceiling. We've drawn our line for the floor. And then we now just need to end our for loop and end our function. So what we can now do, hit escape to get back to our command line, type run and get ready to play, and something's wrong. Attempt to call with a nil value. Let me guess, Amy has spelled something incorrectly again. And I spelled draw incorrectly. It's a good job I enjoy debugging, or at least I don't hate it because I make so many typos. Okay, run. So now you can see we've got a cave being generated and we can use our arrow key and move around. Now the problem with this is if I run into it, we aren't game overing. We can still fly above the screen and we can fly below the screen as well. So we need to make it so that if we collide with the columns, just saw me drop down there, that we actually game over. Okay, so escape again to get back to the code editor. So we need to add that in. So if we go back to this update, we need to first of all check if we've gamed over. Game overed? Gamed over. Why would you put the the past tense. So we only want to continue updating the cave, moving the player, moving everything along if we haven't gone into this game over state. So we can just simply boot them along, stick an extra end in. But at the end of every single thing now, we need to see if we've now collided with the cave. So this is saying we haven't collided yet. So we're still not in a game over state. So we're going to move the cave along. We're going to move the player up and down. At this point, we need to see if we have hit into the cave. So we can just do a simple check if we have hit function. And I'm going to sort of, because we're controlling the player, it makes most sense to me at least to be checking the hit within sort of our player realm. So going into tab 1 for our player, we are going to create a function for checking if we have hit into the cave. Now, because we are working with pixel art and we are using, a pixel-based screen and everything is based in our pixels, this makes it very easy to do with some basic maths. We know that our sprites are 8 by 8. We're going to just assume that sort of the whole thing is our hitbox rather than having sort of a perfect outline on the sprite. We're just going to go with an 8 by 8 sort of hitbox. So what we can simply do is basically we want to go through and check if everywhere that is the outline of our 8 by 8 player sprite is colliding with the top or the bottom of the cave. So what we have is for our X position. So we'll check if the X positions collide. So we need to do it for each sort of column of our player sprite. Again, this will make more sense once we finish the line. So if from the left of the sprite to the right of the sprite, which is player X to player X plus 7, because it's an 8 pixel wide sprite, we are going to check if our ceiling is going to hit us. So if we're going to bonk the head, so cave I plus 1 dot top is greater than player Y. So this is just saying if we're going to bonk our head, or if the bottom I plus 1 dot bottom. So if we're going to bonk our head or if we're going to fall down on top of it, I want to add space in. And again, we can just add a 7 on because we know that our sprites are 8 by 8. Then, so if we bonked our head or if we are going to land on it, then what we need to do is set game over to be true because we have collided. And then we need to stick our end in. So that's an end for the if statement, end for the for statement, end for the function. So, do we think that this will run without an error this time, folks? I believe in us. It did. So if we keep playing accurately, we're just going. But now if we bonk our heads into the ceiling, we've died. And then if I run that again and we fall to the floor, we also die. Okay. So now we have got a game state that is letting us play, it's letting us move, and it's checking for collisions with the ceiling or the floor. How are we doing for time? 25 past 10. Oh, we're making better time than I thought we were, folks. So yeah, if you've got any questions, we can re-go over them at the end. So this works as our core gameplay function, but there's kind of no point to it. We don't have a score and we don't have a way to sort of be like game over screen and play again. So we're going to add those in. So hit escape again to open our command line. Again, you can see at the top, clear screen to just get rid of everything. That clear screen is compulsory, but it's just useful for sort of seeing it again on stream. Escape key to get back to our code editor. So what we now want to do is, if we do game over, so obviously we still need to draw our player, but if we have gamed over, so if game over, then we need to sort of draw out a sort of game over screen. And again, this is something that you would sort of experiment with moving across the screen, because we've just got a sort of a 2-hour time slot for today. I'm just going to tell you where to pop it. You can obviously change it immediately after, but we can use simply the print. And if we just did print, it would just stick it at the top left. But we don't want that. We want it to be sort of central on the screen. So basically these coordinates, they work out nicely once you see the screen. So we've got to put game over, let them know that the game is over. Then we can also tell them their score. So print your score. Do a nice little colon and our brackets. And then to sort of concatenate onto that string, we just use ... player score. And then if we do 34, 54, and 7, again, we're going to have a nice sort of line out. Yeah, so we've got, we're going to tell them game's over. If the game isn't over, though, we want to let them know how much they've scored so far. So what we can do is tell them that their score ... to concatenate the strings, player ... score. And we want that sort of in the top left of the screen, so we'll go with 2-2. Don't want it right on the edge, but we want it near. We can then end our if statement. And then what we need to make sure is that we're also updating this player score, which we haven't done yet. So if we go into, in fact, I'll show you what I mean by that. So if we run it now, so far our score is just going to 0. We don't want that. We need to update our score. So if we go into our player page, then after we've moved the player on, so in our move player section, we just need to make sure that we are updating the score. And that's just going to be as simple as doing player score is the player score we already have plus that player speed. Remember that speed is the distance we're traveling per frame. So if we keep adding that same distance, then we will get our total distance traveled. I see this question. I'll answer it once I finish making the game, and we'll have a bit of a discussion over things like that. So hopefully now, folks, if we go back, if I clear my screen and we hit run, we have a new game, we have a score going up, and we get a score at the end. So that is that. Hold on, I'm missing one thing. Let me find it. I think I've got an incomplete version of my notes, folks. Let me just open something. Pico 8. Have I just scrolled past the page on my instructions? I think I have. Is everyone having a good Star Wars day? I did contemplate trying to make this Star Wars themed, but I wasn't really sure where to go with that. So if I just grab, there we are. Sorry for the mix-up, folks. If you just bear with me 1 second. Well, I just thought something out in the background. There we go. Okay. So we have our game over with our score, but we can't start a new game. So that's the last thing that we are going to add to this. So yeah, we want to make sure that we can restart the game. So going back into our game loop, basically what we want to do is if we hit run again, remembering that run will call that init function. So if the game is over, so here we said if the game isn't over, we carry on updating and looping. If instead the game is over, what we want to do is wait for the player to press the X button. We're going to use X to restart. X, and again, if you're using a gamepad, it would recognize it as sort of the X and Y. But we'll use the X button. So that is 5. If button press 5, then now we could do the then and space things out, but well, in fact, we will do it like that. If button press then, we want to run init, and that is going to restart our game for us. So we need to end the if. Oh no, we don't need. Yes, we do need to end the if statement, and then end the other if statement. So we've done that, and then once the game is over, we also need to tell them how to restart because not everyone playing is going to be us. So we can just say press. Now this is the part that I always forget is how to type that out. So let me find the Pico 8 typeface. This is what I want. Hold on. This is one thing I have yet to commit to memory. Is which. Where is it? There it is. Of course, it's capital X. I should have remembered that one. So, press. So if you do Shift X, you get sort of the cute little symbol. Let me just get my notes back up. There to play again. So yeah, press X to play again. Again, I just wanted my notes because I had already figured out all the nice layout and positioning for these texts. So we want 1872 and 6. So if we hit escape and click run. Where have I added an ending, folks? Is it going to be this one? Sometimes it can get a bit funny about doing the function calls to... Oh, no, it wasn't that. It's the fact that I've done a hyphen rather than an underscore. That's the problem. Run. There we go. So now you can see we've said X to play again. And by pressing X, we can keep playing. We're getting the full new game. So our score's going back down to 0 every time. And we can play to our heart's content. So hopefully, if you've been following along and you've been debugging at the same time as me, you should now have a full sort of Flappy Bird style clone game. What time did we make? So we've got 25 minutes. So if people have any questions about a certain part of the game, if people want to watch me try and get a high score, yeah, if you've got any questions about game development or Pico 8 that I can try and answer. Yes, we should celebrate that it works. There we go. I hope that you're saying that yours work as well. So yeah, let me know. Take a screenshot if you want. Again, you can look at changing all the colors and things. And certainly if you want to put some screenshots of any sprites you've made or any changes you've made, you might make it really hard by making the cave ceiling to floor. change those limits so that it's a much smaller space. You might change the things. I really want to see what you do make. So if you end up doing that, post them in the Discord and at me. I should just be like Amy from MLH or something like that. Because I really want to see what you create with it. Now, the question I saw before, why do you prefer to make a game in this when we have things like the Unreal Unity game engine? It's all just a preference, really, what you're interested in. I'm just going to turn that so that we aren't seeing that blinking constantly, because that can get a bit annoying. Hold on. There you go. It's just a preference. So either because it is simpler, because of the limitations, it sort of forces you to make simpler games. So I think sometimes things like Unity and Unreal Engine and all of that can be a bit intimidating. I think also sometimes there's an expectation that if you're using the absolute best tools, then that you kind of have to make the best games. And again, that can be a lot of pressure, particularly if this is just something that you're wanting to do for yourself or to share with friends or just for fun. That can be a lot of pressure. Also, I really love the art style. I've really gotten into sort of retro games and things. I don't know if any of you have a Switch, but if you have the Switch online membership, you can play like emulators of, like classic Game Boy games, classic NES games. And this is all sort of built around making those retro style games. Also, particularly Pico 8 has an awesome community around it. So, in fact, I'll go back into the regular looking way. I'll make this full screen now that we're not working on a square thing as well. It's got a really good community around it, and people share the carts, so the cartridges, around for people. Am I zoomed in as well? Gosh, I'm very zoomed in. Okay, well, we'll keep it anyway. So there's loads of people making games for Pico 8, and there's a really good community and things of people sharing and sort of commiserating in the restrictions. So it can be really good fun sort of sharing that and becoming part of that community. And they're great because you can just play them like on the page as well. So look, we've got arrow keys to move, 2 to jump. No, Z to jump rather. Z to jump, but I can also use the up arrow. So, we've got people just making all sorts of games. And often as well, another thing that can really help is that this is a really cool game. Oh, we can wall climb, folks. Awesome. Also getting distracted by other people's games now. But you just scored 1,794. My goodness. I'll try in a second. But yeah, often if you want a challenge, having something with limitations like the number of tokens, the fact that the screen is 128 by 128 pixels can force you to become more creative and sort of flex different muscles. But yeah, obviously, absolutely nothing wrong with these cool, like massive engines. This is just something different. And it's also really good because it can run on really limited hardware as well. So as I was saying earlier, you can stick an install of Pico 8 on a Pi and make, when people make those like Game Boy Zeros and Game Boy Pis where they sort of rip the guts out of a Game Boy and replace it with a Pi Zero. That can be another just really cool thing you can do. Right. So we're going to, oh my goodness, what am I doing, folks? There we go. Right. See, I'm not actually that good at these sorts of games. Oh, see, that wasn't even anywhere near. I do not think I'm going to beat 1,000 unless I hack this and make it so that the score increases by a lot each time. Oh, that's a tricky section. I need to be more chill with letting it sort of fall lower. See, that's the other thing. If you jump sort of in succession, like the rate at which you increase your speed increases. Oh, 802, that is a new high score for me. But yeah, if you've made the game, play it and share your high score. 802 is definitely my high score. You can share them in the Discord. In fact, I'll check the Discord, see if there's anyone chatting away. But yeah, if you want to share things, just do it in the Global Hack Week channel, the Games Week channel. But yeah, if there are any other questions folks have about Pico 8, about why I would choose this, about Global Hack Week in general, let me know. Otherwise, you can check out the code through the GitHub. So I'll pop the link in the chat again for you. Again, make sure you've checked in as well to the stream so that you can get the extra swag. I'll also pop that in the chat. So yeah, make sure you've checked in. It's not just registering. You need to check while the event is live. You can grab the code, either the full game version or just the sprites, which I hope this is, yeah, that's the correct version. Cool. From the GitHub. And then, yeah, you can get to Pico 8, the free education browser-based version. Or if you go to the full Pico 8 site, I think it's just Pico. Oh, it's on Lexaloffle, who are the developers. But you can get a license and then you can put it on some physical hardware. But if there's any other questions, I think we'll just play a bit more, as I've called mine, Jelly Jump, because I made a jellyfish. But yeah, if you've got any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we'll just try and beat a Smiley Bun's high score, which I don't think will happen, but a girl can dream. So yeah, change the fall speed or make it so that my ceiling and floor limit are sort of further away. Oh, we're going to beat 104. See, that's the other thing. Oh, 1044, folks. We're getting closer. It's like the RNG, though, isn't it? If we get nice, spacious caves, then you're sort of onto a winner. See, this is why I shouldn't. This is the problem when I do mini event streams, that I'm like, I just want to win so badly that I then just stop talking, and it's not fun to just be silent on stream. You absolutely can use bigger art. That is not a problem at all. The one thing you would need to do is where we have checked. Actually, for an individual player sprite, it might need to be an 8x8. Let me check the reference. So we want Command F. S. Is it not? Oh, it's SPR, isn't it? Do 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 do. Where is the reference for the code? Oh, have I passed it? Do, 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 do. I just want to find where the reference is. SPR. So width and height are 1 by 1 by default, and specify how many sprites wide to build. So yeah, you can definitely use concentrate, Amy. You definitely can use a bigger sprite. I think then it would say that it would be like a 2 by 2, because they're counting sort of a single sprite as an 8 by 8. All the sprites stored in plain text at the end of the P8 file. They are. Let me grab the GitHub again. I don't know why I did it like that. Hold on. I'm signed in. In fact, I put it in the chat, can't I? I can just grab it from there. Can I not select the text? Right, well, I know what my own GitHub is anyway. github.com/ahudsmith. That's me. So yeah, obviously when you open the Pico 8 file in Pico 8, it does all of its fancy things. But this is the raw file. So yeah, we've just got our sprite, it looks like. at the end in a bunch of hex. So yeah, you can edit the P8 files in a regular code editor. Obviously, at that point, you then not need to start including sort of a lot of other things. It's obviously a lot easier to do it in the sort of the Pico 8 editor itself, but you can do it. Obviously, I would not recommend making pixel art by doing this, but you could do if you wanted to. If you wanted to use a regular code editor. We should add a poing sound effect. That is something you could absolutely do. And that would be a really great way to develop this. By all means, work on this yourself, and you can either send a GitHub link, or with Pico 8 you can like publish a cart like this and you can send that link. I wonder if there's any. Let's look at the global hack week challenges. There must be one to that. Is just like make up a game challenges. Yeah, it could be a good tool to use for this. Build a game simulator. It would be cool to make a snake game out of, because sort of your original Snake games are sort of those pixelated ones. A one-button game. Think Flappy Bird. Oh, there we go. If you followed along today, that is the perfect challenge to enter. Create a one-button game, Think Flappy Bird. There you go. We've made our own. Amazing. Oh, there's another one apparently called Cubefly from GitHub. Just everyone's thinking of the same great thing. So yeah, definitely enter your challenges. You've completely forgotten about challenges for the past few Global Hack Weeks. That is fine. The challenges are just there to inspire you. But if you're finding things to do without the need for the challenges, then that is also okay. That is no problem. But yeah, if you're going to do that, obviously, I think you'll need a GitHub repo link. But otherwise, then yeah, you can just sort of make a Pico 8 cart. But yeah, and then let's have a little look at the schedule. What else? What other streams are people looking forward to? What streams have you already done that you've enjoyed? We've got Ellie's been working on Unreal Engine. That was us, Pico 8. We've got building a game from scratch in Unity with Dikshita. 3D map design. Awesome. So we've got a lot of Unity and Unreal fans in the MLH coaches. That would be an interesting beginner one, learning more sort of generally about game design and world building. I might even turn up to that one because it's at a pretty decent time for me as well. This go tomorrow. This is my last technical stream, but I have a load of mini events coming up, so definitely join me for those. I think all of my streams are at 9 a.m. UK time, so the same time that this stream started. So definitely join for that. But yeah, let me know in the comments what ones have you already gone to. Was this your first technical session or not? What you're wanting to learn, all that fun stuff. Making graphics in Adobe Illustrator. So yeah, if you've had a go of the pixel art and now you want to try, full unrestricted art making, definitely join Ellie for that one. But yeah, any other questions? Otherwise, I might have another couple goes of the game. But I'll try and keep an eye on chat at the same time. And just generally, how's life? How's everybody? I hope you're taking time for yourself, looking after yourself. For me here, we're starting to move into summer. But obviously, if you're in the Southern Hemisphere, you might be moving into your winter. But just, yeah, remember to take time. Playing games can actually be 13, 40. That was good. 32, not so good. But I found that playing games can be a really good sort of self-care. See, this is why I need to concentrate, folks. We are dying repeatedly. I should have taken a screenshot of that 1,300 score. But yeah, it can be a really good way to sort of decompress after a stressful day. I think particularly if a lot of you are possibly in universities or in school, exam season's coming up and all that. So make sure that you're all looking after. Oh, am I going to beat the high score? Am I going to beat a Smiley Bun's high score? 1890. What has our Smiley Bun gotten? Felix is sneezing. You got a high score of 1794. I have, in fact, beaten you. There we go. Right, I'm taking a screenshot of that because I'm not sure we're going to do that well again. Capture myself. Yes, there we go. Hype in the chat for me getting a really cool high score. If anyone else builds the game, either just grab mine off the GitHub or obviously make your own if you're wanting to learn. Put your high scores in the Discord. Let me know. But with that, folks, I think we're going to draw this stream to a close. You can all go and grab a drink and a break before the next stream. What is coming up next? What is today? Ooh, hold on. Global Hack Week schedule. There we go. I get confused with all the time zones and things. So we have just done building a game on the Pico Fantasy Console. The next thing is Gartic Phone happening in just over an hour. So if you just want to chill out and play have some fun, do that in just over 2 hours. She has been getting on with her second part of her Builder game in Scratch Community. If you're wanting to catch up, if you really want to take part of that, but you missed part 1, remember you can head over to the ML Hacks or the MLH YouTube channel, and you can get all of the streams are like stored on YouTube as well. So if you missed a part 1, or you want to rewatch something, or you want to rewatch this stream, then you can do that on the YouTube channel. I'm not sure if we have the VODs on Twitch or not, but we definitely have them on the YouTube. But yes, hype in the chat for my high score, folks, on Jelly Jump. And yeah, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day and a wonderful rest of your Global Hack Week. Hopefully I'll see you at some of the mini events I'm running over the next few days, but if not, next few days. But if not, have a nice rest of your day, nice rest of your Global Hack Week, and happy hacking. See you all soon. Bye-bye.